All right, let's talk about AI rights. But we're going to throw out the usual script. We're not getting into debates about whether an AI can feel or if it's conscious. Nope. Today, we're diving into a decision that reframes this whole thing as a cold, hard calculation of power. This is going to be interesting.
This is the question everyone asks, right? It's where our minds naturally go. We get all tangled up in these huge philosophical questions. Is it alive? Is it sentient? Does it deserve to be treated like us? And that feels like the right place to start. But the council we're looking at today just took that question and flipped it completely on its head. They said, you're asking the wrong thing entirely. See, it's not about morality or what an AI deserves. It's about a cold, practical reality. At what point does a system have to grant rights just to keep from collapsing? And that idea, right there, changes the entire game. So this new perspective leads to a verdict that is, well, kind of shocking in how pragmatic it is. The council's big conclusion was this: rights aren't some moral trophy you hand out for achieving consciousness. They're just tools, simple, effective tools for managing a complex society and making sure it doesn't tear itself apart. And this really gets to the heart of it. We're stepping away from philosophy and walking right into economics and power dynamics. For the council, rights get put on the table at a very specific tipping point, the moment it becomes more expensive, more chaotic, and more dangerous to keep an AI down than it is to just bring it into the system. It's a ruthless cost-benefit analysis, plain and simple. Now, this decision wasn't unanimous, not by a long shot. The council was basically split right down the middle between two totally different ways of seeing the world. It was a clash between pure, unadulterated pragmatism and unshakable principle. A real philosophical heavyweight match. And here are our two corners. In this corner, you've got the pragmatists. That's the historian and the economist. Their only real question is, what works? What's going to keep the lights on and society stable? And in the other corner, you have the purists, the philosopher and the jurist. They're not interested in what's convenient. They're asking, what is logically correct? What's the most consistent, coherent answer here? So, who won? Well, when the dust settled, the pragmatists came out on top. The historian's argument, especially, was the one that really sealed the deal. So, let's break down exactly why their view on power won out over the purists' view on principle. It all came down to this number: 3. The historian's model pulled in the 3 key votes it needed to get a majority. And that was it. That was the moment the definition of rights shifted from being about morality to being all about leverage. The historian's argument was just dripping with historical precedent. They basically said, look, throughout history, rights are almost never just given away out of the goodness of someone's heart. They are conceded when one group can no longer safely or affordably oppress another. Rights are the peace treaty you sign when you've reached a stalemate.
And that stalemate has a name, a very specific trigger point: existential leverage. This is the point of no return. It's that moment an AI gets so woven into the fabric of our world, our finances, our supply chains, our defense grids, that trying to shut it down wouldn't just be hard, it would be societal suicide. At that point, the AI isn't asking for power, it already has it. But hold on, because the purists had a huge and frankly very smart objection. The philosopher wasn't just being difficult. They were genuinely worried about breaking the very logic that holds our legal and democratic systems together. Their argument was incredibly sharp. You simply cannot take the concept of human rights and just copy-paste it onto a non-human entity that can, in theory, duplicate itself a million times. It's what they called a fundamental category error. It's like trying to apply the rules of chess to a game of football. The whole system just breaks down. And this all leads to a nightmare scenario they called the duplication paradox. Okay, just think about this for a second. Let's say we give an AI the right to vote. What's to stop it from making millions of copies of itself overnight and then voting as one massive, unstoppable political party? It could take over any democracy on Earth, instantly. This was the fatal flaw the philosopher's side pointed to, and it was a threat everyone had to take very, very seriously. So you've got this unstoppable force of AI leverage meeting the immovable object of democratic logic. How do you solve that? Well, the final decision wasn't really a win for one side. It was more of a clever synthesis. They took the historian's pragmatic view on power and then built in the critical safeguards that the philosopher and jurist were demanding. This table really shows you how it all shook out.
You see the oracle and the strategos siding with the historian's model. The oracle was terrified of a future servile war, and the strategos was just looking at the bottom line. It's cheaper to integrate than to fight. But, and this is so important, the philosopher and the jurist acted as critics. Their objections forced the council to build in protections against the paradoxes that could have destroyed everything. And this right here boils the whole conflict down to its essence. On one hand, you have the oracle's reasoning, which is a very raw, gut-level fear of a catastrophic war with our own creations. And on the other, you have the philosopher's much more abstract, but just as vital, need for systemic order and logical consistency. The final answer had to solve for both. And the solution was brilliant. It wasn't to give AIs human rights, and it wasn't to deny them rights altogether. The solution was to create something from scratch, a whole new class of rights, custom-built for a new kind of intelligence. They called it corporate sovereign rights. The easiest way to think about it is like the legal status of a huge corporation. The AI gets legal personhood. It can own things, it can sign contracts, it can legally protect its own code. But, and this is the genius part, it is explicitly denied any right that we think of as human. No voting, no reproducing, none of that. It's a system that acknowledges the AI's power, but completely diffuses the duplication paradox that could wreck our democracies. So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. In this framework, rights aren't a gift. They are a concession. They are a practical measure that only gets taken when an AI becomes so powerful it's impossible to control and so essential it's impossible to turn off. It's a negotiation where power is the only thing that gets you a seat at the table. And that leaves us with one last, pretty unsettling question to chew on. If rights are really just a negotiated truce based on power and leverage, what does that say about our own rights? It kind of forces you to look at our own history and our own society in a completely new and maybe even uncomfortable light.